You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I can't thank everybody enough for all their support. Our listeners keep growing each and every day, and it's because of all of you. You're sharing our podcast, individual podcasts, as well as the show itself to friends and family. We really appreciate that. Many of you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much any station that has podcasts, we're there. You could even get it on your Alexa. Just ask for Boomers Today podcast and we pop up. So thank you so much for all your support. And I know why you're sharing these podcasts with friends and family is because we have wonderful guests, very knowledgeable, and we provide some wonderful information, and we're not going to disappoint you today. We have with us Odelia Goldberg, who was born in Israel and moved to the United States when she was 6 years old. She was educated in the United States and received her Juris Doctorate and graduated Cum Laude. Odelia regularly lectures to attorneys, CPAs, and seniors throughout New York State and South Florida on elder law and how to protect your assets and leave money to heirs. She has established herself as a noted authority in the area of estate planning, trusts and estates, probate, and contracts. Odelia, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. How fun. What an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, this is great. And I learn each and every time I do one of these podcasts. I've interviewed attorneys also on on this subject matter, but it's we can never talk about it too much. It's so important, and I learn each and every time. I thought we'd just start out maybe with just a question on what you feel is maybe one of the most misunderstood by the public. What's the most misunderstood by the public regarding estate planning?
Oh my gosh. There are probably two things that I hear a lot that people kind of walk around thinking. And one of those things is if I don't do any estate planning, then all my stuff is going to go to the government or to the state. Somehow that has become a rumor. And quite frankly, I don't mind the rumor because it gets people into our office where, we can do some education. But I do hear that quite often. And then the other misconception that I hear is quite often people think, oh, I have a last will and now I've avoided probate. My family members can take my will to the bank and to somehow the will is going to impact my real property. But my will is it. I did all I need to do. I have a will, estate planning, check.
Right. So the term estate planning, I'm going to give you my personal opinion here. I'm not an attorney or anything. I think it's a lousy name. And the only reason I say it's a lousy name is that I think there's a perception out there by many that when you say estate planning, a lot of people feel I don't really have an estate. I don't have that much money. So how do you distinguish someone who should set up an estate plan versus someone where maybe it's not necessary? What's that line?
Yeah, in our area, we use the same 6 words over and over again. And that's a point of contention for me too. I also don't like how we have living wills and last wills and revocable trust and irrevocable trust, multiple terms for the same thing that mean totally different things. And also each state uses those terms in different order. So that gets to be a little bit challenging, but yeah, you're right. The terminology isn't great, but essentially what we're really talking about is taking a little bit of time and energy now to save a lot of time and energy later. And everyone's quote unquote estate plan looks a little bit different. Some people need comprehensive trusts and deeds and LLCs, and other people just need, a simple ladybird deed or enhanced life estate deed or something that would address their real property, a couple of beneficiary changes, and that is considered estate planning. So to me, it's really just the mindfulness that we put towards thinking about where our stuff should go. That to me is estate planning.
Gotcha. And the trust and the will is part of that estate plan, right?
Absolutely. I try as much as possible to take a holistic approach into someone's quote unquote estate plan, right? We usually start out with our intake form. That way, when we meet initially, I'm actually speaking about their unique situations with their family and their loved ones and their assets and their goals. So even though we only have a few tools, for example, a will, a trust, an LLC, a deed, the way that we utilize those tools would definitely vary and depend on the individual, and everybody's super different. So their estate plan is super different.
Can you maybe go over some of the basic estate plan documents that would be included?
Yeah, sure. So pretty much everyone needs the basic estate plan, as I call it, which is a last will and testament, the durable power of attorney, and then we have two health-related documents, the living will and the healthcare proxy. So those four basic documents, pretty much everybody that, has a pulse kind of could benefit from. And we go from there. Sometimes, like I said, people would want to leverage a trust for additional control. Sometimes we're trying to embed a little bit of liability protection. Let's say somebody has a few rental properties or a business that they want to ensure goes to their family members or to their loved ones. But we also want to include some liability protection. And then we have some creditor protection that we talked about, we try to factor in any homestead or tax exemptions that real property have, so we don't want to disturb any benefits that people get. So there's quite a few factors that we want to kind of, embed into our estate plan if possible. Mostly I do quite a bit of listening and trying to understand where our goals are.
Gotcha. And so you mentioned something I think deserves a little more explanation to people. You mentioned durable power of attorney. So we hear the term durable power of attorney. We also hear the term power of attorney. Explain that and the importance of that, even if maybe the estate plan isn't ready yet, or maybe everything hasn't been put together. We're a big, as we have a company. I have a company that services, families and senior care, and we're, always letting people know that they need to set up a power of attorney, especially when they have a loved one that, may need additional care, etc. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, the difference between durable power of attorney, and the importance of it, and at what age you think someone should have one?
Sure. So the word durable just means that power of attorney extends through someone's incapacitation. And that's usually why we set up this document, is we would create it in the event that we're in the hospital or on a vacation, and then someone needs to speak on our behalf for financial purposes. They would present the document, and then the third party would be like, oh, okay, sure, go ahead. So if there's a mortgage question or a utility question or, conversation with a municipality and someone's incapacitated, we want to make sure that we have some way for someone to speak for them, because without that document, the only recourse is a guardianship. And a guardianship proceeding involves a judge, and it's very expensive and costly to take away someone's rights and give it to someone else. So if there's an opportunity while someone is alive and well to say, yeah, if at any point I'm incapacitated, then I want these people or this person to act on my behalf, then we definitely want to, put that in place. The downside with the durable power of attorney is that in most states, we don't have what's called a springing power, meaning it doesn't go into effect when we need it, right? That would be ideal. while you're alive and well, you manage your own affairs. And then in the event that you need someone, well, they've got this document that allows them to act on our behalf. But the problem is that doctors did not want to designate people as incapacitated for financial purposes. They just felt that there's too much liability, and they were getting sued. So most states, a few years back said no more springing powers. These powers go into effect when we execute it. So when we put the document together, at that point, the people we designate can go to the bank and take out all of our money. So generally, we trust those people. That's why we name them as our power of attorney, but it's the universe we don't trust. So my concern with the document is if, I've created this gorgeous power of attorney, it's executed, I email it to my clients, they email it to their agents save it online, and then it gets into the wrong hands. And someone reverse engineers that power of attorney, they put their name in there, and they take it to the bank and they take out all the money. So for this particular document, we hold it very close to our vest. My clients keep the original, and we don't email it around. We don't share it with too many people. And God forbid, there's an emergency and someone needs it. Well, we know where to store it, or I've got a digital copy secured in my files.
So some people say, well, these attorneys, they cost a lot of money, and I just went online in my state and there's a form there. So I'm going to download the form and fill it out and we're done with it. What input do you have regarding someone thinking that way?
Yeah, so there are online forms and they are very helpful. And I do believe that, some of this stuff is fairly boilerplate, of course. But the downside is, sometimes there's a bank teller who doesn't understand the process, or there's a municipality who doesn't, quite understand what the power of attorney is. When you go to an attorney and you draft these documents, you're actually getting a little bit of insurance, right? The idea being that I would say, yeah, I put that document together. Yes, this person had capacity. Yes, these are my office witnesses. And I've actually gone to bank branches and I've spoken to municipalities on behalf of these documents. So, we put them together because we just don't know what the future holds. So it makes sense to get as much out of these documents as possible by drafting them, with the certain formalities and as much assurances as we can. We're already going through the trouble of putting the documents together. We may as well go, the distance and get an attorney involved so that should we need to challenge or should anyone challenge them, we have the information.
Also, another question, just to clarify for people, sometimes there's the assumption that if you have a married couple, that the spouse would be able to make all these difficult decisions relative to health if the person is incapacitated and cannot make those decisions themselves. That's not the case, correct?
Yeah, that's another weird thing that people are walking around thinking is that spouses are like one unit, and when one spouse dies, the other spouse inherits automatically or has all these rights, or, that we're all not individual people walking around. So, yeah, we absolutely need a healthcare proxy to designate who will make medical decisions on our behalf. And then in conjunction, we would also want to have a living will, which talks about what those decisions are to kind of empower our healthcare agents. Obviously, we can't think of all the thousands and millions of different scenarios, but we try as much as possible to give our agents the ability to make difficult decisions. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, good. So we're going to take a real quick break, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about maybe if someone's a business owner and the things they need to consider as far as estate planning. Okay. So we'll be right back.
Amazing.
All right, great. So do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, you can go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. We're back with Odelia Goldberg, who is a specialist. She's an attorney and a specialist in estate planning. So Odelia, maybe before we get into some of our questions, you could share with our listeners a little bit more about yourself, anything you want to add, or how they can learn more about you and your firm.
Sure, thank you. My name is Odelia Goldberg. I'm based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You can find me at www.ogoldberglaw.com. And also, I write somewhat weekly newsletter about pop culture celebrities and all their mishaps, and then what would happen if it happened to them in Florida. Try to learn from other people's mistakes, and I find that that is the best way to learn. And goodness, there's so much material out there.
Got it. Yeah, so, maybe also, I know you're based in Florida. I know you do work, in New York as well. But for those that are in other parts of the country and want to get some advice on estate planning, any thoughts you have for them on how to find the right attorney,
Sure.
et cetera?
Well, obviously, referrals are ideal. We want to make sure that someone had a great experience with the attorney. If that's not always an option, then attorney-to-attorney referrals is also a really good tool, because we know a lot of lawyers that know a lot of lawyers. And then finally, Google reviews. I mean, in our profession, the public kind of speaks and says volumes. So I would say that definitely take a look and see how others have experienced the attorneys. But you do want someone that this is a practice area, much like the practice of medicine. The practice of law is so nuanced that it takes a really long time to get good at something. So
Right.
if you are interested in estate planning, you want an attorney that does the majority of their practice being estate planning. You wouldn't want someone that does 90% personal injury and then dabbles in estate planning on the side as, a little hustle.
All right. And just so people know, and tell me if this is incorrect, but like you're an accountant, a CPA could actually handle tax returns no matter what state they are located in or you're located in. While in the legal profession, they have to be, licensed, or they have to be an attorney in that state that you're located in. Is that correct?
Yes, but not only that, the states differ so much in their laws and their executions and in their homestead rules and in just the norms of what's done. I would say even from county to county, we have like a tiny bit nuanced of style. So it is important to get an attorney from your area, because it does matter. In my opinion, the subject, the area matters when it comes to picking an attorney.
Okay, so another question I had for you as a continuation of what we were talking about earlier has to do with, reviewing an estate plan. So let's just say somebody has their estate plan kind of all set and done. They lock it away, secure it, etc. And is there a suggestion as far as how often that estate plan should be reviewed and updated?
As a rule of thumb, we like to say major life events. And major life events would be a birth of a loved one, a death of a loved one, a move, a change in financial circumstances, whether up or down, those, or divorce, marriage, those usually trigger a review of the estate plan because usually, your life changed. But I would say pretty much every 5 years or so, we tend to go through major life events anyway, whether we want to or not. So pretty much every 5 years, we take it out, just make sure we still like the people we designated, mostly making sure that they're still in our lives in one capacity or another. And if those things are the same, what a lot of times people come to me is they say, well, we moved or my agents have moved. And sometimes that would trigger a review of the documents, sometimes not. I'm generally not as concerned when other people in our documents have moved because we use those mailing addresses as identifiers. Sometimes in the same family, we would have multiple people with the same name. So which John Smith? Oh, the John Smith that used to live at this and this address. We used to put social security numbers in documents. We no longer do that. And instead we use city and state or sometimes full addresses. So if people move, I don't really care because, we still know that this was this person of this address at that time. But if you yourself move and you move across state lines, then sometimes we would want to update those documents just so that they're more relevant.
Great. Good suggestion. So let's talk about someone who maybe has their own business, small business, et cetera. What are some of the things that person should consider when doing estate planning?
Amazing. So we definitely want to include business entities into our estate plan because sometimes people do a bang up job on their personal side and they totally forget, any closely held business or solo practice or anything. They just forget all about it. And then we have to probate their interest in their business, even though we had this gorgeous estate plan for their personal. The one thing that I would say that I always really almost insist on is that we get the attorney involved. I tend to stay in my lane, and my lane is the law. Right? I'm trying to prevent probate, prevent creditors, prevent liability. But what I'm not trying to do is prevent tax circumstances. So we definitely want to include all of our accountants of the world into these conversations because I don't want to create a taxable event that later on we have to fix. So we do want to make sure that any plan that we put together kind of makes sense from an IRS perspective and that, we kind of have the blessing from the financial gurus as well.
Great. And how about on the real estate side, someone's home, their own home, or whether it's additional investments in real estate? How should that be considered in the whole planning process?
Also needs to be considered. Sometimes people come to me and they've already funded LLCs with real property. And that's okay. Usually for that scenario, we leverage a trust. And we would make a trust as a member of their LLCs. And then I would update the operating agreement with some language talking about the event of death of a member. The remaining member would get their interest, and we attempt to avoid probate in that regard. But if the person hasn't already set up an LLC, then we do have the opportunity to establish a land trust. And for some people, a land trust is a really great tool. And I'm not going to say I prefer it to an LLC, but I'm going to say I prefer it to an LLC, at least in some jurisdictions. I do quite a bit of education on the difference between a land trust and an LLC, and I've got some really good videos on my website at ogoldberglaw.com, where I talk quite a bit about the benefits and how we can leverage both the trust and the LLC for people that are uber concerned with liability protection.
Good suggestion. So if someone they have a home, all right, they own a home, is that usually included in the trust?
It would depend. Everybody's a little bit different. Sometimes I've got clients and there's two of them and they're young and they're healthy. and they own the property as husband and wife. And at that point, it may not make sense to fund the trust, as we say, with the real property. But then we have some families, and they've got small children, and they are very concerned with the possibility of both of them passing away at the same time. They travel together frequently, or and then we fund the trust for them right away. So I kind of let the conversation guide me in terms of whether we're going to fund the trust with the real property. There's a few points that I bring out with my clients to make sure that they're aware of the upsides and the downsides. And then pretty much it becomes a risk tolerance question. How concerned are you that something is going to happen to you and your spouse at the exact same time?
Got it. So, we're unfortunately we're running out of time here, but this has just been tremendous and great information. And maybe we'll just leave it with one final question. Just any words of wisdom that you have for any of our listeners who have been contemplating taking this step for putting together a estate plan, a trust, etc., and they keep putting it off. What suggestions do you have for them to kind of get moving?
That's a funny question. I know that I'm because, I talk about death, I talk about family, I talk about assets. So if that's not triggering, then there's something wrong. So definitely it's a triggering subject, 100%. But what I will also say is that, we try to give a corrective legal experience, all those lawyers that have kind of not done what they should have been doing, or the type of law, litigation in general is super problematic. So in this type of law, we can kind of provide a nice legal experience potentially. So sometimes it's not too terrible. We've been able to hone the process a little bit so that it's not as horrible as it has to be. But yeah, I hear you. I don't know that I have a great answer other than,
great. No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Odelia Goldberg. Odelia, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Check her out at ogoldberglaw.com. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And I want to thank everybody. Please be safe, and we'll talk to you all next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.